time has come in this project to move on to the wash. So what we have here is our aircraft. It's been gloss coated and mostly decaled, a few things left to do, but I'm gonna go ahead and test out the wash. And looking at different colors, that might be a good choice. This is Mr. Weather and Color grayish brown. I've got all the Tamiya ones, brown, dark brown. I was thinking about maybe ground brown here. That's a dark brown, Mr. Weather and Color, but I want something subtle. So basically what I'm looking for is something maybe gray, dark gray, maybe a good choice. I also picked up a few new washes. These are oil washes from SMS, same idea, gray and brown. But for some reason, I want to try this grayish brown Mr. Weather and Color. So let's just start hitting some panel area back here and see what happens. Capillary action does most of it, but I'm just go ahead and basically paint it on here. One thing I found with Mr. Weather and Color, I don't use it a whole lot, but some of them have BBs, some of them don't have BBs in them, so you gotta be real careful when you mix it up just to make sure you get enough color and not just the carrier, which more carrier than color here, but I think that's a good place to start and test out what we've got going on. It's a nice start. So we're gonna let this dry. I'll be using white spirits. The preliminary wash test is done with a grayish brown. I didn't let it dry for very long. I actually only let it dry for a few minutes and then grabbed some white spirits and a whole ton of Q-tips. Went to work. This is what we got. What I found was I didn't let it dry enough, so I'm basically spreading the ground brown around the panels, which I guess a little bit of weathering, but just to give you an idea, there's an area that's just painted, no panel liner. There's a little bit of panel liner, it's subtle, and it actually, and more often than not, in a lot of those places, I actually took the wash out of the panel lines, but you can see kind of like all through here, it's built up and it's held, but all down in here, I just didn't wait long enough and took it all out. So there you go, that's the start. Further updates as events warrant. I went ahead and tested two other colors. On the back end here, it's Tamiya gray, and on the front end over here, I used Tamiya dark gray. Really like the brown on gold gray paint, but I don't want to go too strong on it, so I'm curious to see how the grays look. I will say this, the Tamiya stuff, I love that there's a brush in there. I don't have to clean a brush afterwards, and it's just so thin, and it goes on so well. Mr. Weather and Color is great. I haven't tried the SMS stuff, but Tamiya, every time I use it, I just go, oh, this is why I like Tamiya. Let it wash, sit for a little while, so now we're going to go ahead. This is just white spirits. I've actually filled this up with, it's like Home Depot brand. So I'm going to take a little bit off. I'm going to do here is show you. So take a little bit, just, this is how I've been doing it. I don't know how right this is. Dab it off till it's almost dry, and then come back and, oh man, this room is so much nicer. I found that maybe I just did it too fast, but the Mr. Weather and Color stuff just kind of spread the color around. This, a nearly dry brush or Q-tip, this just wipes off. Oh yeah, digging this a lot. Let's see what happens here. Oh, much more contrast. The other thing, and this is probably completely just my technique, but the Tamiya stuff, at least the way I'm doing it, the Tamiya stuff is staying in the panel line better than the Mr. Weather and Color. So yeah, I'm taking the wetter one, going over it, taking the dry one, and cleaning it up with the dry one. A lot of times I just do most of the stuff in the airbrush. But there we go. Liking that a lot. All right, well, now the decision time is going to be what color I'm going to use for the rest of the airplane or for the whole airplane. And that's going to take a little bit of thought, but there we go. You can see the areas of no panel lines and the area of dark gray panel line. That's actually pretty stark. Time to ponder. Decided with the weathering. Here we go. So we started with some Mr. Color grayish brown. Then I used some dark gray. Now what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to mix my own. We've got dark gray and brown. We've got them all mixed up. And I'm going to start with my dark gray. All right, so the goal with this is not to replicate the color that I have in Mr. Weathering Color, but let's just kind of see what we get to here. And I'm using these little plastic cups. Like that. Well, this is definitely more brown, less yellow. Okay, so back to, I'm using these little cups. They're the mixing medical things here. I don't think they will last very well over time with an oil-based solvent in it. However, for what I'm doing right now, just mixing these up and using it, these things are perfect because I can just put the lid on, give it a good shake. You know what? This is really too dark. So let's take our light gray. This is great, by the way, tip of the day, for cockpit panels in between the different panels, and it also works on the Quinta sets. Put a little bit in there. Not quite light enough. Let's get a little bit more. Funny enough, I feel like we're right back to this ground brown, or the grayish brown, which was a little bit too brown for me. Okay, after lots of experimenting, testing, and trials, this is what I got. And if I hold up to this, it is basically the same color. So I just made my own grayish brown. Well, it is definitely darker than the Mr. Weathering Color. I like it. We're going to use it. Here we go. Doing this stuff, I really try and minimize where I put it. I see a lot of people kind of lather it on, which is great, which is fine. I just try and minimize the cleanup, so I'm trying to do this kind of as neatly as possible. And my brush sucks, so we're gonna have to get a softer, better brush. All right, neat trick that I found. These vials fit perfectly into the 5 milliliter cup for the ink tattoo cups I use for painting, and it really helps with a little bit of stability. These panel lines here, I'm just getting just a tiny bit, and capillary action works, but I also can draw, because I'm doing this so light, right down the panel, so there will be minimal cleanup, but I'm getting it in all the little fasteners as I go. Nice and light down here. I just don't like to load up the brush and kind of go to town on doing this. I feel like a little bit more effort here this way yields easier, maybe not better results, but certainly a much simpler time during the cleanup process for me. And that's actually really damn messy, but I guess you get the idea. If I turn this around, you can see on this line, I did it off camera and did it really nicely. And then I go to do it on camera and make a mess, but that's how this thing works. So we're just gonna keep playing around with it. And that is pretty much the entire top. Now we are gonna look at what we're gonna do on the bottom. So let's flip this sucker over. I've done some airbrushing work for weathering. I'm not going to weather this very much, but let's just give this a try and see what we think. On white, it's going to be a lot, starker contrast, and I may, on the white stuff, go lighter overall. That's not too bad. Let me get a little closer look. I am going to come back and do a little bit of airbrushing and some oil work, but again, the idea on this build is I'm keeping it really kind of clean, not just because the jets are brand new and weren't weathered, but I just working on a kind of a clean look for this one. Okay, well, it looks like the body is done. Here's a look at the bottom, and let's flip it over. There's a look at the entire top. Got some stuff on the sides, the bottom, and of course in my usual way of rushing. Things like back here. These decals aren't sealed. I haven't put a gloss coat over the top of them, so anything with mineral spirits will wipe those decals off in a heartbeat, so I'm going to be really, really careful. What I am going to start with, though, is right here. I have a little bit more trouble getting the white off, or the brown off the white, so I dip my Q-tip into mineral spirits, and then I just come in and take it off. This actually looks pretty good. I'm just using a normal Q-tip right here. If I go back over here, I've been scrubbing away at this one for a little while. Let's take the dry side. I don't like to leave any solvents on the plastic, longer than I have to. So that's a wet one. Here comes a dry one. I'm just going to work over the top of it. All right, continuing on, here we go. Let's take our damp Q-tip. In this case, I'm just going really lightly over it. I kind of get it wet, and then I come back with the dry one. Do a little bit more of the work with that one. And only do this in a few spots, and then it's time to replace the Q-tip. Non-skid is applied differently in a lot of cases. Back in the early 70s, it was applied pretty much solid, and what's different about that is later on is where we have these fasteners. This is what delineated when you usually see one big square, two big squares, a small piece, and then another square. And what that is breaking up with those fasteners. You don't want to put non-skid over the fasteners if you need to get access to it. Otherwise, you have to scrape it away, reapply, and do all that. So that is what basically governs how the non-skid pattern goes on there. In the older days, let's call it, in the early 70s, that wasn't the case. They put one solid thing. Again, on the fleet, it was only on the pilot Rio side, not here, but we're going to do the other one today. So, 1/4-inch tape fits perfectly. There we go. Now, in measuring that, what we saw on the picture is basically it comes back to this panel line right here and back, and it's solid. So, funny enough, to me, a 1/4-inch tape also works on the other side, except lay it down against the jet right there, and this needs to come straight, and it's going to be out on the outer lip. The other thing I notice on non-skid that people kind of miss is they take it all the way to the leading edge. That's not actually the case. If there's a little panel line right here, and on the real jets, they don't put on the leading edge. I think it mostly has to do with airflow. Simply, you don't want the non-skid on the absolute leading edge of an airflow surface. So we're going to use our other tape. Bingo. And then at the back of this, on that line, let's put this on straight. That is going to be where the non-skid is going to go, and it's going to go over everything there. And use trusty old MIG anti-slip paste. This is in black again. Unfortunately, the walkways are not in black. However, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the black paste. We're going to paint it, and then we're going to do a couple little bit layers of weathering. And to do this, I'm just going to Get a good amount actually on the brush here. And boom, let's go. Non-skid away. I don't need it to be heavy or thick. What I just need it to be is not uniform. And what you can do, this is actually probably a better way to do this one, is kind of brush it on. And then come back and dab at it. The nice thing about this is it's water-based. If you screw it up, a little warm water, some soap, you get rid of it and start all over. I have just some little sponge, basically pizzas. I think these are actually res kit packing material, and I'm going to just come and hit it straight down. You don't want to streak this stuff because it will look weird. A different angle and that sort of thing. So boom, there you go. Let's zoom in. I don't even need to wait till this stuff fully dries. We can just go ahead and grab our tape and pull it right off. There we go. There's one side. And two sides. There you go, folks. Non-skid. Next step, paint it, weather it. Boom. Well, returning for a quick footnote. How stupid was I to pull up the masking tape because I need to paint it? Because I have to mask it again, which means you get right to the line. So go back. Don't do what I just did. Don't take the masking up if you're going to paint it, because now you got to mask it again and it will never be right on. So that's going to be fun. In the meantime, you know, F it. I may just try and weather it. After it dries, I'll grab some Mr. Weathering Color, Tamiya panel line stuff, and see if I can just weather it and get the gray tones I'm looking for, because I just don't want black. So there you go. Safety tip. Have a nice night. Welcome to part 2 of the walkways. And we're going to see what a little bit of weathering by washes will do. Picture I have, this stuff has more of a barley gray. It's not real blue gray, but a gray. So what I've done is I am grabbing Tamiya. This is just straight gray, actually. We're going to give this a try. I'm going to start by just kind of wicking off a little bit on the towel. Oh yeah, I think this is actually going to work. Right off the bat, we got a good idea. So just working it. I'm going to do this light. I don't want to flood it too much. And we kind of work it out to the edges. I think this is going to be exactly the look I'm going for, just for fun. The boarding steps that I had done, did those with black and then actually just used white. There we go. Just a little more touch up front. I was about to say done, but the as it starts to dry, it loses some of that gray color. So maybe not done quite so much. All right, I decided to grab some of my Tamiya light gray here and just go over the top of everything. And it's getting it down. There was nothing wrong with what I had. I just, looking at the pictures, I like that lighter gray color. So I went ahead and tried to replicate that a little bit better. I'm just going over the brushes pretty light. I keep damping it off. And then just hitting the spots again and mopping a little bit up. So I like the way this has turned out. We're going to rock with this. And I think, let's pull out a little bit. There you go. All right. I like it. We're good. Calling it a day. Non-skid is done. Boom. I wanted to point out just one of the cool things that decals can do to improve detail, and that is on the wing here. the leading edge, you can see there's now rivets or fasteners on the part of it and nothing on the other part. And what I've been using is the Fightertown Decal sheet. We did for data weapons, we have both this metal section with metal and the fasteners and just the fasteners. I like painting the metal personally. I've done it both ways. The one thing I do, if you look at the sheet, but you can see it's all one long piece for the whole thing. That works great for the metal, but not so much for just the fastener part. And it will work, it's just a very long piece and it's kind of fragile. So what I do is I cut it in half and I apply half and half. So just to give you an idea, so you get the look straight paint without and rivet fastener decal applied. So I love this detail. I think it helps the model stand out, and it's unique when you see it on the table. Definitely one of the trickier decals, I think, to apply. Here we go. What I've been doing is I get a little bit of water my fingers, start at one end. Oops, start that again. And the idea is to pull it straight. That doesn't always work, so whoa. This is where patience and some hot water come into play. All right, we have just about got it set. All right, let's come back in. Basically, I'm just taking a hot water on the brush and kind of smoothing it all out to make sure it fits and is placed nicely. We flip our wing over here. We get the same. And that is that. A little wrinkle to work out here. I'm going to call it a day for that. I'm going to mat it down, put a little decal solvent on, let it sit, and call it done.